Hi, I'm Ed, Voyage Adventure Vans. In this video, I'm going to show you how we fit a large battery in the back of a van, bolted through the floor in 4 places, but avoiding all of the chassis rails underneath and things that get in the way. We're going to do that using aluminium profile, and we're also going to use coach bolts. So here's the problem that we're faced with. We've got a whacking great battery that we want to fit behind the wheel arch in this van. I honestly don't believe that a couple of luggage straps and a few bits of wood screwed to the floor is a sufficient way of securing 30 plus kilos of battery. Whenever we fitted batteries in a van, we've always gone for a mechanical fixing, which is normally involved either an M6 or an M8 threaded bar through the floor, either side of the battery, and then a strap, metal strap across the top. Just like you'd see under the bonnet on any typical sort of, car battery installation, there's normally a battery clamp across the top, staying clear of the terminals, which basically is fixed in 2 places. With these big leisure batteries, this is a Roma 460, which I believe weighs about 36, 38 kilos. It's a big mass at the back of the van. The one thing we don't want it to do is move during hard braking or hard turning, things like that. You don't want it to really move if you have a bump. So my own method with such a big battery is to use 8mm threaded bar through the floor, 4 of these per battery, and 2 metal straps across the top. We then get to the other problem. Sod's law states that wherever you really want to put these, no, they're not going there. Wherever you really want to put these, there will be something under the van in the way. This is a MAN TGE, and I want to install the battery in this section behind the wheel arch. There really isn't a great deal of option for where I put these. The battery needs to go almost as close to the wall as it can, almost as close to the wheel arch as it can. It's probably less than an inch of manoeuvrability in this. So that would mean that these bars have to sit against the wall and out here. The position out here almost is doable, but there is a chassis rail that runs down here. However, on the side here, the inner sill comes about 3 inches out from the side. So if I try and drill down next to the sidewall, it's actually going to be inaccessible underneath the van. So the solution I've come up with, and I'm willing to share this with you guys, is using aluminium profile. This particular profile is KJN, but obviously others are available, and a lot of people are using this within their conversions. And this is a 60-30 profile with an 8mm slot. What we've found is that an 8mm coach bolt with the sides ground off will actually slot in there and give you a hidden fixing, which is contained at the top. So therefore you can put a washer and a nut on the bottom and you haven't got to hold it steady. How we use them in this situation, I've got 2 crossbars, which are obviously wider than the battery, and I've picked spots here where we've got the spring mount in the middle of the battery here underneath the van. So we've got a space here where we can get a couple of bolts through. We've got a space here where we can get a couple of bolts through. By using this aluminium profile, we can slide 2 coach bolts into there, and to a certain extent it doesn't actually matter how far apart we slide these. So as long as you don't want them right next to each other, but if you've got them 5 or 6 inches apart underneath the van, then that is a secure fixing. So by putting this at a sensible spacing underneath the battery, we can secure this to the floor. That then leaves the top of this completely clear, so now we can put the vertical rods which hold the battery down to this bar, we can put those where we want to, not where we need to. So underneath, the fixings go where they need to, and on the top they go at the edges of the battery. So that has just got a normal it's got a normal T-nut with an 8mm thread on it. You could use one with a 6mm thread. That just slots in, and then we can nip that, we can screw that in tight with our fingers, then we can nip that locking nut down, and that will secure that to the floor. So I'll take you through the fitting of the floor one. In this particular position, I've put them in the rear slot. You could just use 30-30. If you use 30-30 profile, then you've only got one slot to worry about. So I'm going to put those in the rear slot. That sounds bad. How do you recover from that? So this here is free at the moment to slide back and forth. The side of the van does taper in. I know from my position they're going to be just past this black line, so I'm just going to put them both in the same position. They don't really need to be measured. They're behind a cupboard, but I want them, you know, within a millimetre or so of each other. Now all I've got to do is go under the van, put the washers and the nuts on, and tighten them down. So that's the bottom part taken care of. So these are the two bolts that have come down behind the suspension mount, and then in front of the suspension mount you've got the other two bolts, and I'm trying with this one here to miss the load lashing point, the load lashing bracket, because obviously that makes it bloody hard to drill through. So that's where they are. We will come underneath later on when we finished underneath the van and nip these off a bit with an angle grinder or a Dremel, and then obviously spray them substantially with underbody sealant. So what we've done, these are secured to underneath the van. You can see there's a bigger gap there, but they are the same size. It's just the tapering of the floor. Now what we're going to do is slide one of the 8mm bars in. The way I've set this up is that the bar is going to go into the other slot just because of the spacing of my plates. So I'm just going to tighten that down by hand, and then just nip up the bolt at the bottom. And I'm putting a reasonable bit of pressure on it because I don't want it to move when I put the nylock on the top. So what I have done as well, I've introduced just a little bit of Copex, which is going to slide over the bar so that if there's any movement in the battery while I'm sliding it around, I'm not going to be sort of scraping up the side. It's probably overkill. Overkill is my middle name. So put the second one in, just keeping the spacing around about the same on each one. Lock that in place, slide that over. Now what we've got is the bottom plate. Arguably we could just rest the battery on there. I'm sure it would be fine. But just to spread the load and save any wear, I've put a 9mm birch ply piece together. So that's just going to sit there. I've just scooped the sides out so that they just clear the lugs, and then we're going to put the battery on. So this is a bit where I get a small hernia. So the battery's now in place. It's more or less up against the wheel arch boxing. We've got to put our inside rods in place. And then what we're going to do is introduce our top plate. There's nothing stopping me having two metal bars going across there. I would probably normally use angled aluminium, probably 3mm thick, inch by inch, or, you know, it's got inch aluminium angle in a 1/8 thickness, which is pretty much 25mm by 3mm. So that would normally be what I would do. I'm not 100% keen on having bare metal or exposed metal that close to the terminals. In this case, I can't really short it out if I've got them going across there, because, you know, there's a 100mm gap between the terminals and the battery can't slide that way and therefore make that bar come into contact with them. However, my solution serves two purposes. One, I'm spreading the load. Number two, I'm introducing a non-conductive material, i.e. birch ply. This is 15mm birch ply, and I've machined it on our CNC to allow me to put in a 3mm aluminium bar, which is rebated into the top. It doesn't need to be rebated. You could just put a bit of bar across. I'm fairly confident that these lugs on their own, even though it's in 15mm birch, would snap in the event of an accident. And the other reason that we've used a birch ply 15mm deck is that there are things on the top here that we wish to secure in place here. So we can screw sort of fuses, we could secure cables, we can put some T-clips screwed into this, and it just gives us a neat, secure fixing for the battery and, you know, any electrical components we want. So this is going to go on top, just squaring everything up so that it's not in contact with anything I don't want it to be. So now that we've got that lined up, I can go ahead and tighten these bolts up. So now, just to finish off, we're just going to put just a washer and a nylock on each of these. We've put an angle here, just 45-degree angle. Sometimes without stacking the cables, because they're very thick cables, this one will have two 50mm cables coming off each terminal, because we've got a Multiplus 3000, and that's the recommended wiring. Well, the recommended wiring from Victron is 2 lots of 50mm cable. So if this was a bit too close here, we're going to struggle without doing a big loop to come off here and across there. So that's the reason for this slope. This is fully bolted down now, and that is not moving. I was going to say it would rock the van if I grab this, but to be honest, the van's on axle stands, so it's not going to move anyway. But you could move the van literally, you know, by moving this. As with any videos that I do that are showing you tips or how I do something, it really is important for me to emphasize that this is how I do it. A lot of what we do will have many ways of achieving the same thing. I'm never going to tell you this is how to do it. It's how I do it. and if you choose to follow it, then you do so at your own risk. But it's a way that I believe is safe and secure, and something that I'm happy to put my name to. If you think you've got any benefit from the video, then please give it a thumbs up and a like. If you like that sort of content, then consider subscribing, and we'll try and get a bit more consistent with our video releases. But thank you very much for watching. How we slipping off the fucking in the back of a van, securely through the floor, but avoiding the mother